Hello, everybody.
Hello. Welcome back to the Leo Lens podcast. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Sakshi.
Sakshi, what are we talking about today?
Resolution. Ooh, so y'all might be like, are you guys crazy? You're like talking about resolutions. It's the end of Jan. Why now? Why now, Nathan?
So why not? So because we want to take a look. We're, like you said, the end of January. Iconically, resolutions do not stay very long.
They do.
The quintessential example being everyone January 1st is I'm going to go to the gym. And then by about now when we are filming and when you're listening to this podcast, it will likely have already failed in the majority. 51% at least.
Love that. That's half. That's half.
51% is the majority.
Not bad. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah. So we wanted to kind of go and have a, it's still early, but still also a sort of retrospective look at our thoughts about resolutions as a whole, and then also our own resolutions.
Yes.
So Sakshi, I kind of throw it back over to you. Tell the listeners about your resolutions.
So my resolutions weren't resolutions per se, and I will explain this. I feel for a lot of people, their resolutions are like very physical. Like, oh, I'm going to work out X number of times a day, like you said, Nathan, or like, oh, I want to eat healthier. Like, it needs very active work on their end. Like, they have to get up and they have to go seek something. But for me, on the other hand, mine are just like leaning more towards who I am as a person and just changes that I want to introduce mentally, like for me, my resolutions this year were like to read more. Like, I want to read more of the New York Times or like subscribe to more magazines that I like. Or the other thing is I wanted to like not check my social media a lot, like I'm not a big fan of social media and I've said this 10,000 times, but I still used to like occasionally check Instagram when I was bored. And now I'm like, oh, I don't want to like compulsively check my phone. So for me, these resolutions aren't resolutions per se, because this is stuff I've always been like leaning towards. And just coincidentally, like this is the time that I want to sort of initiate or implement that in my life. I feel like these are more personality-ish, like life changes-ish. And they're like very, like they head into a specific direction. Like I'm not checking my phone and I'm reading more. Like there's not a very big spectrum that I have to follow there to maintain it.
Yeah, I think you use the word direction. I think that's a good way of describing it. It's a very directional, I want to do more X.
Yeah.
I'll keep going using the gym example because my resolution was go to the gym more.
Yeah.
Where, if you say I want to go to the gym 3 times a week, that's very hard to do, especially if you're going from 0. But
yeah,
that sets you up to inevitably, for some reason, that won't pan out.
Right.
Be it the first week of January, be it the, halfway through November. But then, I failed that one time. And then the next week, I failed last week and it wasn't that big of a deal. So if I failed this week, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I just can't, you give up.
Yeah.
Which is why we're at the end of January now. I think a lot of people have already given up on them as a whole.
Yeah.
Versus the directional type.
Yeah.
Because you can say, I want to read more, I want to go to the gym more because, okay, I didn't go to the gym X number of days.
Yeah.
But, next week I'll still go more. And that's still, as a whole this year, I'll have worked out more than the last year.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of sets you up more to do well.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a big issue with, it's kind of ironic that, it's New Year's, we all sing Auld Lang Syne. Everyone is ready with their resolutions. Do better in this coming year.
Yeah.
And yet you set yourself up to fail.
Yeah.
Which is why I also, like you said, I like calling them New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
Because that ties you back to the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
I failed my New Year's resolution.
Yeah.
Throw the whole year out the door. I feel like that just sets you up for that negative mindset.
Yeah.
And now that I'm saying all of this out loud, I did not do background research on this at all. So I don't know the answer. Wait, I have no clue where New Year resolutions come from as a tradition. Like, now that I think about it, it's all, like, I kind of question everything now. I'm a little existential of, like, when did any New Year's traditions begin?
Yeah.
Because you start to think of it, you know, you have like the 1940s is like when I think of like classic Christmas. You know, you have like white Christmas movies, Bing Crosby and everything, you know, classic Coca-Cola, Santa Claus, that's Christmas.
Yeah.
But did they have like New Year's celebrations then? I really don't know.
That's so interesting that you bring that up because I feel like globally, like obviously the only New Year's we celebrate is like the 1st of Jan of the new year. Like that's the calendar. But back home in India, and I'm sure this is the case for a lot of different cultures, like we just had the new lunar new year, you know. So there are actually a lot of cultures that have their own New Years, and those New Years mean very different things to them. Like I'm from India, and as you may know or not know, within India, we have a lot of different cultures. Like there are people from different regions in India and they have their own festivals, they have their own traditions. And within my city, like there's so many people from like so many different backgrounds. And I know of at least 3 to 4 different New Years, like each kind of person, each kind of culture. And that New Year means something very different to them. So like for us, for like just the global New Year, like ours is more about resolutions and, like, oh, the new financial quarter is starting, all of that. But for them, like, since this is more culture specific, it's like, oh, for their New Year means something that's very universal to all the people in the culture. It's like, oh, this is the New Year of like abundance, or like this is the New Year of health. And that's very universal to all people in that culture. So yeah, like it's super interesting that like we on a very macro level follow just, oh, it's 2023.
Yeah.
But within different cultures, it's like they have their own days that we don't even realize.
I think that's a big thing, especially with Americans, of just not realizing how many different New Years there are and different New Year celebrations. I know you said we just had the Chinese Lunar New Year. I don't know if it's the same as the Islamic Lunar New Year.
I am not sure. But again, that's like 2 New Years that we know.
But even regardless, like I know, like, Chinese Lunar New Year, they have you're right, like their own very set traditions. The year of the rabbit, I believe.
Yes.
They have all their different cultures versus, we really do just think New Year's, and it's really kind of boring in my opinion. I
know, just imagine having like 2 New Years, like they have had like their 31st parties and then they had like parties for the Lunar New Year. Like exciting.
I don't know. I think just because we're talking about, I think New Year's parties, I don't know how many, if any, you've been to here in America, are somewhat lame.
I've been, and they are lame.
Yeah. Like it just feels not as special. I feel like that ties back with the resolutions where it's very facade-like.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, it's always supposed to be like, you think like Great Gatsby style, like party and everything, like it's all glitz and glamour, when typically it's not.
Yeah.
More often than not, New Year's parties, by definition, somewhat have to.
Yeah.
Just end up like, you all just staring at the couch and watch the television, and then
that is so true.
And then the television goes, wee, and then you all go home.
Yeah, and then it's like sleepy time. And it's just another day.
Yeah.
I know so many people who just sleep through the New Year's because they're like, it's not a big deal. Like, I don't need to like go out and like consume anything just because the year is changing. And that too, the year is only changing according to your traditional calendar. There's a lot of other solar calendars, again, that like a lot of different cultures follow. And according to them, like 31st December and 1st Jan is in the transition of the year.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know what? I think it's universal. I honestly think it's a facade everywhere, like across the world.
Well, because it's such a...
It's so forced upon. You're forcing yourself to celebrate something that comes back in 365.
And I'm sure people will be like, well, that's every holiday. But just like, New Year's are such a human construct.
Yes.
The time isn't... Versus, I think the way I would argue it is other holidays are tied to, a specific person or event, which are definitive, or specific happening, right?
Yeah.
Like Christmas, Hanukkah, other, winter holidays are somewhat tied to the winter solstice.
Right.
Or, you have other solstice holidays. So they're tied to that. Versus New Year really is, it's like, okay, we change our calendars, because,
Yeah.
and then we just tie resolutions to that.
Yeah.
It's all just kind of like, but why?
Yeah.
Why set ourselves up to fail when, I'll take the moment to say, if your resolution failed, make a new one. I think that's another part of thing that gets people where I mentioned earlier where, your resolution fails in January or in November for, say, again, working out. That can cause, I think, a lot of people to be defeatist about, but it's like, just, make resolutions whenever.
Yeah.
If it certainly helps to have a start. People like a cold turkey, hard start time.
Yeah.
But, start things whenever, if in March you get the time and ability to go to the gym, you say, hey, I want to go to the gym more. That's great.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people do. Don't get me wrong. But I do think, again, going back to New Year's being a semi-fake holiday, people tie special significance to the new quote-unquote New Year resolution.
Yeah.
But then don't tie to the March resolution the same amount of weight and importance.
And this is so funny. I'm literally showing Nathan a quote from like our first episode. And I said, why is it that as people inside of eggs, each phase has to crack at a certain age? And I think you can somewhat apply this quote to like resolutions. Like, why is it that this newness or like this motivation or this spark only sets in on the 31st of December and then it's supposed to resume from the 1st of Jan? Like, is it something biological? Like, it's just, it doesn't make sense if you think about it. And it's actually, I don't know, I feel like this is sort of kind of micro ages because it's like, okay, no, when you think of the new year, it's like, it hits you, right? That this is one more year that I'm on the planet, one more, revolution around the sun, whatever.
Yeah.
But then you're like, oh, this year I want to achieve this. And you're sort of putting the pressure on yourself to be like, oh, this is proportional to this. Like if I'm 25, that means 25 workouts in a month or something. You get what I'm saying?
Sure. You get the existentiality
Yeah.
of what we talked about in our birthday podcast.
Yeah.
So if you haven't listened, go give it a listen. It was one of our most fun podcasts, in my opinion. But you get the existentiality of that. One of those two words I used were fake. But you don't get any of the pomp and circumstance and joy that you can out of a birthday.
Yeah.
It's just very cold.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
No, it does make sense. Because I feel, with New Year's being universal, like you just feel like, you sort of question, oh, am I doing this because my body and my mind are telling me to do this? Like, does it feel intuitive to me that I want to do this new thing this year? Or am I just doing it because culturally it's emphasized that the new year is your time to begin new things? Yeah. And also on the topic of birthdays, I agree actually. For me, my resolutions are like more about like, oh, I've turned a year older. So on my birthday, I want to like start doing this for a lot of things.
Sure.
So I personally don't believe that like 1st Jan is the go-to for all things because you may know this or you may not. But I believe in moon cycles. Like I sort of track the new moon and the full moon and everything. So
werewolf looking.
Yeah. So for me, I don't necessarily want to put so much pressure on just one day of the year. Like because sometimes I think of something like you said, why not the March resolution? Like sometimes I'm like, oh hey, I see Nathan doing this. I want to adopt this habit into my life. But if it's only March, I'm not gonna wait all the way till like next year to start it.
And there's no difference between March and January.
There isn't. Then except the seasons, which I'm hating right now because it's super cold outside.
Even barely. We're from Ohio, so March 1st being warmer than January 1st may be a bit presumptuous.
Yeah. But except that, there's quite literally no change if you like think about your life.
Yeah. We've just been straight hating on New Year. So I want to share some about our thoughts on. I still think it is a very valuable tool to use as that start. So I want to share one advice I'm going to steal from a YouTuber I like. Okay. And then also just my own advice for resolutions.
Okay.
There is a YouTuber I love of CGP Grey, spelled with an E because he's correct. But he is a American who teaches in England, like a college professor or something, but does educational, really fun videos.
Okay.
And he also talks about like his philosophy of like life and everything and does like Q&As, and he's talked about his system of productivity.
Okay.
And granted, it does come off that he is like an Excel maniac, whatever word you want to use there, but I think he has a fairly good idea of New Year's resolutions are bound to fail. And when you have the different times, what he does is quarterly assessments on himself instead.
Love that.
Where he does every 3 months. That would be a quarterly.
You didn't tell me math was involved, Nathan.
I'm a business major, not a math major. So every 3 months he'll sit down and he talks about like, also he uses a similar system to what I like of roses, buds, and thorns.
Okay.
Of roses, things he's liked, buds, things he's looking forward to, thorns, something that went wrong. Right. But he kind of applies it to, things that I, enjoyed that I want to keep going, things that aren't working that I want to try and get rid of.
Yeah.
And new things that I want to experiment with. And you just kind of keep doing that.
Right.
I think that's overall, for people who are interested in, if I really want a New Year's resolution to help me, I think that's a much better system to adopt. And of course, go check out CGP Grey. It's literally the letters CGP Grey.
Spaces?
No spaces, space, Grey. Find him on YouTube, but he goes much more in depth and can explain it way better than I ever could. But I think that's a much better system to creating them.
Yeah.
But in general, then I'd say just like directionality would just be my biggest point.
Yeah.
We've already said this, I want to do blank more, blank better, whatever, versus setting those hard goals. Because it's hard to fail directionality. It's really hard to fail, or it's really easy to fail set hard goals.
And, I think maybe maybe for like the first 2 or 3 months, you sort of lean towards directionality. You're like, okay, I want to work out more. And then after 3 months, you realize, okay, so like on average, I'm working out 4 times a week.
You get into a groove.
And then now you're like, okay, now I want to set 4 times a week. But there is no harm in treating this, as we treat everything on the Leolands podcast, as a spectrum. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be just one thing. That one thing doesn't necessarily need to start or end at a specific date. You can always mix and match it up because guess what? It's your life. It's always your life. I feel on the 31st of December and on the 1st of Jan, those are the only 2 days where everybody feels like they're in the same boat. Like whether you're in India, in the US, whether you're in college or you're 35, all of us are wanting to start something new. All of us have this pressure. And I feel like there's nothing more universal than that pressure that like resolutions create. But beyond that, it's like, suppose it's Tuesday. Yeah. And suppose Nathan's thing was working out and mine was like, oh, I want to be more artsy this year. Like, we have completely different resolutions and it would be unfair to compare both of like our progress. So it's like, if you wouldn't do it on a normal day in your life, try not to do it on the last day of the year, on the first day of a new year.
Yeah.
I
don't know who made the quote for it, but the famous quote of comparison is the theft of joy.
Yeah.
I think applies really well. In general, I think that's a great quote that applies to everything, but resolutions especially is, is not something you can ever compare to others.
Yeah.
Because, gym is the easy example. If yours is 3 days, someone else will do 5.
Yeah.
But that gets into my next point of, it's good to keep in mind the baseline.
Yeah.
If you're going from not working out to 3 workouts out, that's great. If you're
that's amazing.
Anything, that's great.
Yeah.
If you are going to be even directional or hard lines of bit realistic, which I think is something that seems so obvious, yet I think is still so often neglected. Making New Year's resolutions. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It does make sense. I think it's important to give yourself the grace, again, like to be human. And I think, like Nathan said, I think it's very important to view your progress because it's like, they might be working out 4 days a week last week. So for them, 4 to 5 isn't a big deal. But for you, for someone who went from 0 to 5, that's huge.
That is chaos.
So like, I think it's like, I know it's easier said than done, but like try to view it in terms of only your life And this is something I think about all the time is like when you're being mean to yourself, think if you would treat a friend like this. Like if a friend was telling you that, they're comparing themselves to somebody else at the gym, I'm sure you would provide some words of comfort.
Yes.
Say those same things to yourself,
It's always treat others the way you want to be treated. Yet, I have never heard treat yourself the way you treat others.
Self-love Monday. Mindful Monday right here. No, I love that.
Which I've genuinely never heard before, but I think that is something. We're social creatures by disposition. Of most people are kind to others.
Yeah.
But then have very much that spotlight effect on yourself.
Yeah.
Where you highlight your own issues. And that applies to everything, including the resolution.
Right.
Where no one has a perfect resolution streak.
Yeah.
I would be, I think, hard-pressed to think of any. I'm sure someone do. Someone has a resolution of, like, take a picture of themselves every day. Sure, that's doable, I guess.
That's doable. But then again, I don't feel like that's a resolution. I feel like there's a very big difference between things you just want to introduce in your life versus a resolution. I think a resolution is more when you like disapprove of something in your life that's happening right now, or you think it's something that needs to be worked on, and then in the new year you want to build on it. I think with like change, it's just like, oh, this year I mostly wore blue socks on Tuesday. Now next year, let me wear pink socks. Like that's not a resolution. It's just it's just a change. It's just something you're introducing. I feel like there's a difference between working on projects versus working on yourself.
Sure, I think that would make sense for resolutions. I know there's a book about it, and I've never read it.
Love that. Thank you.
So let me give my opinion. The white guy on a podcast giving his opinion. Shock, gasp, I know. But it talks about, the premise of the book is talking about improving yourself 1% every day.
I don't even like that.
You?
I don't.
Why not?
Because some days you're just going to improve yourself 0.5%, and maybe like a week later you might improve yourself 3%. I think life should be viewed in terms of colors and not in terms of numbers. Because when you view it in this is what I believe. When you view it in terms of numbers, there is an analysis to be made.
Sure.
There is a chart to be made. There's forecasts to be made. When you see it as a color, hey, you may not like that color, but that color exists.
Sure.
You may look forward to some more colors, and you may not like some colors, but they all are colors. You don't wish that, oh, I wish purple wasn't there, because purple is a color.
You may be taking it a little too literally.
But you didn't say...
Yes, but like, there's no way to can't quantify 1%.
Obviously. But like, okay, what if somebody was like actually keeping like a notepad of like, oh, this is how many times they did something?
The entire premise of the book is just trying to find that small improvement every day.
Okay.
Is easier and better than trying to do
10%.
Or not even 10%, having by July of this year, I want to have a 6-pack. That's a really hard and weird goal to set. Versus if you go, hey, I want to get 1% better every day with physical fitness. That's a lot more doable.
Yeah.
Because it's not 1%. It's not one day you do 100 push-ups and then the next day you do 100.
Yeah, it kind of fights inconsistency. Like it sort of rewards consistency instead of like the grind set mindset.
It's the handy crushification of everyday life. The small little serotonin drops that everyone craves.
That's so true. I think what I was talking about, like in terms of viewing it as a spectrum, was just like improvement in general.
Yeah.
Like, because, like, let's be honest, like sometimes there are phases where people's mental health isn't that great. And then that would be like maybe 4 to 6 weeks on an end where you're just not working out. Does that mean that you invalidate all the other time you spent working out? No, it just means that, hey, maybe this color, like the color of these few weeks was gray. And maybe you move on to like a yellow next week where you start working out maybe once a week again, like try to get back on that schedule. But it's like, I think it's better for everybody's mental health to acknowledge that everything will exist because we are humans. And like you said, like sometimes things just happen, whether we like them or not. And it's just like, oh, I really like this phase. Let me try to keep it up. But this phase also existed. Yeah. This other phase also existed. And yeah, it just is what it is. You can't
plan. I'll get the core issue with everything is you can't plan your year in advance.
You
You
cannot.
have, the quote of everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Applies to, that's not, it's quite literally about thought.
My nose started hurting, even though touch wood, I've not been punched. But I just imagine the pain. But go on.
With that New Year's resolution of, you can make your resolution plans all you want.
Yeah.
Resolution plans can go really well until X, Y, Z in your personal life happen, and then they inevitably fail.
Yeah.
Which is why I like a more directional and or
Yes.
if you like the 1% per day, if you like the quarterly type setup, if you like the colors, whatever system for you works, where it's more repeated, smaller increments than kind of a year out forecast, because years are so big and yet so arbitrary.
Yeah, I think that's why birthdays, at least for me, now that we're talking about this, I think birthdays make more sense, because with a birthday, you are a year older. There is something that's happening in your life. There is little change. You're turning a year older. And again,
it's tied to a real thing.
Yeah, and it's tied to a real thing in your life. It's your birthday, So it's I think that's a little easier and more believable than oh yeah, everybody, all 7 billion or 8 billion of us are starting a thing together. That's just, we are 8 billion, right?
I think as you said that, it hit me that I think we have hit.
Yeah, we have 8 billion. So it's just I think, okay, let's do our guidelines. Now that we've spoken so much about it, just summarize our guidelines. We'll take turns. You start.
So I think my two were just, I like the directionality type of resolutions. And I like my preferences for the CGP gray quarter system, but just the more frequent check-ins with yourself kind of you introduce things and you get the little drops of serotonin along the way.
Yeah.
And what about you?
Okay, I'm gonna explain a few things with examples because it just came to me.
Sure.
I think the whole checking in with yourself every quarter is actually a very good idea, because okay, I know most of our listeners are college students, but I know some people who still go to school who listen to us. Suppose they start the resolution, and I know you and I were talking about this before recording. Suppose you have this resolution of I want to be more well-read. I want to read more chapters. I want to be more present in class. I want to know what I'm doing. And you try to read a chapter before going to bed every night. But then you realize that resolution wasn't your choice. It wasn't for you. It's more you are supposed to perform well in school. So you are doing this for a result that doesn't necessarily mean a lot to you. In that sense, I think a quarter revision is good, because you may be hey, I started this year with a resolution of I want to read more chapters, but maybe that's not the method that's working for me. Maybe for me, I want to just absorb as much as I can when the professor says something, and maybe the reading isn't as important for me. So I think, like you said, revisiting something you're doing, make sure that it still fits in your life, and then acknowledges your growth, because you're hey, I may have wanted something then, but I've grown and this isn't what's right for me.
I like the way the course system, at least in my recollection of it, is where you're keeping, it lets you introduce new things to experiment and then keep what works, discard what doesn't work. I think that's a good framework to kind of help you grow without punishing yourself for the things that don't work.
That's so true. And I personally do this for people on social media also. And this isn't something that I do on 1st Jan per se, but I always there is some point in every year where I look back at the people in my life and I'm hey, is this friendship still working? Do I need to probably reconnect with someone? Just and it isn't a new year thing, but it's just sort of, hey, it's intuitive, I've grown and I want to check in. So I think it's nice that you don't focus on one day, but rather see this as your life thing, and when does it feel intuitive to you? When and how? Do you want to do quarterly check-ins? Again, semi-annual, whatever. You do you.
This probably...
Moon cycles, some of us.
Which is probably what all the journaling girlies are on about all the time.
Yeah, I'm a journaling person.
I'm not a journaling person, so I wouldn't know, but I feel that's kind of what the core of that is kind of taking that New Year resolution concept and applying it kind of day by day.
Yeah. I also believe that some things should be meant for the year, like the 365 days, 1st Jan to 31st December. And some things should be meant more for your inner mind body cycle. Like I feel like when people say, oh, I want to take more vacations this year, or I want to go to this place this year, that makes sense because if you are working, you have a set number of holidays per year. So like that vacation thought can only come for like, oh, in this set of 365 days, what do I want to do? But like if there's like something you just like, if you want to like start baking in March, don't be like, oh, next year I want baking to be my resolution. Because then you're sort of starving yourself of what you're naturally leaning towards.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's basically like food. Like sometimes we feel hungry and we eat like a fruit bowl at 4, like I did today before recording. But on most days I don't. But I gave myself the grace to eat today because I was hungry.
Sure.
So it's like, you do you, and don't, like, just because everybody eats dinner at 7 doesn't mean I'm going to wait till 7. I might want to eat dinner at 6:30. Like, and does it matter in the grand scheme of things? No, because when I meet Nathan at 9, we both have eaten dinner.
I think Sakshi is hungry.
No, she's not. But I just thought of the acai bowl that's sitting right there. And because it's an easy thing, right? Like, we eat every day.
Yeah.
If you're like, whatever, based on your diet, we do eat at least one meal a day. So it's like, treat it like your food, you know? Go for the different cuisines. Eat out with different friends. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, apply food as an example to everything.
Sure.
Yeah. And give yourself the grace. You'll fall. You'll pick yourself up. Band-aids exist. Yeah.
I think, again, I don't know if we have even explicitly said it yet, but just, if you have a resolution, like, felt like going, like...
Yeah, you got this.
Like, no one knows. Like, ultimately, all of this boils down to, like, no one knows your resolution, really. Like,
and even if they did...
And even if they did, just, like...
People are so self-absorbed. Yeah, I love that. I love how we both just proved my point. People are so self-absorbed. Like, I may know someone's resolution and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is her resolution. And 2 seconds later, I'm thinking about what I want to cook. Yeah, maybe I am hungry. But you know what I'm saying?
I definitely think so.
You know what I'm saying? Like, people only care about what you're doing and whatever is up in your life for like 2 seconds. And after that, everybody has too much in their own life. So like, you do you. Like, honestly, life is a spectrum. We're probably in a big video game.
This entire podcast is just Sakshi finding ways to work you do you into every episode.
I'm not joking though. I think that's my big... I hope to spread this message that like...
That is your
you
personal motto.
You do you, and life is like a spectrum. Like, it's a color wheel. Yeah. That's our thought on resolutions. But Nathan has some fun stuff, guys. Now that we're done with the resolutions part, Nathan had an interesting week.
I did.
Tell us.
So I, as a student here at The Ohio State University,
Thank you.
Go Buckeyes, had an amazing opportunity. Wow, it's been a long week.
Oh, it's only Monday. Oh my God.
Was that?
That was
Thursday?
last week. Yeah.
What was that? Thursday?
It was Thursday.
That was a long weekend.
Yeah.
On Thursday, I had the opportunity to go to a private event with the one and only, besides her like 5 sisters, Kim Kardashian.
I was going to say KK, but then I realized all of them have the same initials, so I was like, never mind.
It's like, oh, Khloe Kardashian. No, Kim Kardashian. And it was a private event hosted by the Ohio Innocence Project to...
What is that? What is the Ohio Innocence?
So the Ohio Innocence Project is a affiliate of the National Innocence Project.
Okay.
Which is a criminal justice organization that works to help people who are wrongfully incarcerated, who are innocent but in prison, and help take their case through the system to try to get them ideally freed, but then also in a lot of cases off of death row.
Okay.
So she did that at a private event here, and I was able to go because I was the VP of the Ohio State chapter's executive board last year.
Okay.
Super cool event. It was her and some of the lawyers of talking about the case of Kevin Keith. If you're listening to this podcast and you like podcasts, she talked about in her own podcast about the case of Kevin Keith, who is still in prison today, but was on death row and got removed from death row and just sentenced to life without parole. They're trying to get that fixed as well. But it was super cool to be able to go to such a private event and be able to hear about it. Hear about the case, hear about her work.
And hear her voice. Like, I feel like when Nathan came back, the first thing I wasn't like into the discussion that happened. I was like, how's Kim Kardashian? How does she look? How tall is she? What does she sound like?
I'll answer. She looks and sounds exactly like what you see in the show. Less dramatic. I definitely think the show dramatizes things.
And obviously the event you were at wasn't a place where she could use her normal celebrity tone also, maybe. Like, maybe it was like more like informational or whatever.
Well, I think in a way, like, it's very much like the show is meant to be dramatic. Like, she looks and sounds the same. She was very clearly a great public speaker.
Yeah.
Was very mindful of everything, was giving great answers. In part because this is tied in with her work. She's done other criminal justice, wrongful incarceration work. She's doing a non-traditional law school path. And yeah, it was really cool.
Love that. Do you have a word for our viewers? Like a sentence, a motto like mine? Not a motto, just anything. Just like if you were to sum up resolutions into like 1 or 2 sentences, what does Nathan Baldwin think about resolutions?
Go directionally and just try to keep consistent throughout the year. Kind of keep consistently reviewing everything, see what's working for your life. Ditch what's not.
Consistency is key.
Yeah. What about you?
Life is a spectrum and everything is like a color. So just go through it. You know, I have this, I think my favorite quote, something I saw on Pinterest was like, nothing to prove, just here to grow. And I'm like, hey, yo.
You're such a Pinterest girl.
No, I'm not joking. But guys, make that, let's make that like sort of our saying for the season, whatever the season may be to you. It may be 2023 or like this cold, depressing season of winter or like, you know, whatever. Nothing to prove, just here to grow. And with that, we're going to call it an end on our resolutions episode. Nathan, where should our listeners follow us if they haven't been doing so?
So, if you've listened this far and you're new, welcome. We hope you enjoyed. We hope you can stick around for more episodes. And if you are a long-time listener, also listen up. So we are on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. If for some reason we're not, let us know. We also release our videos onto YouTube. If you are on YouTube and you're interested in following the podcast, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell. You can also subscribe and follow us on the traditional podcasting platforms. We do release the episodes there earlier.
Yes.
Because then I have to edit it for YouTube, and that takes some time.
Yeah.
But then...
Working man.
Yeah. Follow us on social media. We have an Instagram. We have a Twitter. All the links should be in our link tree, which you can find from just about any touch point where you see us. We should be able to find it there. Just kind of follow that network and connect with us.
Fun. And like, let us know if there's anything you want Nathan and me to like cover in one of our episodes. We're open to suggestions. We love you guys. As a reminder, this is not a parasocial podcast. So if there's something you want us to talk about and we're like, hey, that's a good idea, we will talk about it and we'll give you credit if you want credit. So like, there's your incentive. Your name's going to be out there and our listeners are going to know about you. So do it. I dare you.
Do it. Like
do it. No, I'm kidding. We love you. Have an amazing week. And until then, bye.